If you carry a firearm and discharge your weapon in self-defense, you could face hundreds of thousands of dollars in legal fees and expenses. So carry the protection of CCW Safe, Self-Defense Legal Services membership. Upfront payment of all criminal and civil defense costs with no out-of-pocket for members.
Are back. I'm Chris Evan, the CEO of Survival Dispatch, joined tonight by my good friend Jeff, MD, 26-year CIA case officer, author extraordinaire, affectionately known as 007 in-house. I got to tell you, Jeff, I haven't seen you since last year. You don't look like you've aged a day. I don't know what you're doing, but keep doing it.
Younger, actually. Continuum thing.
That's awesome. And we're joined tonight by Pastor Sam Jones. Sam, I don't want to do you any injustices, so I'll have you give the elevator speech to introduce yourself to our audience, please.
Yeah, well, first of all, thank you for having me on, Chris. And I do need to say, especially since it's CIA, Jeff, Sam Jones actually is my name. That's not an alias there. So I thought that's important for people to know. But I pastor Abundant Life Christian Fellowship up in Humble, Iowa. And also I work for Equipping the Persecuted, which is a mission that helps persecuted Christians right there in Nigeria. So those are probably the two main things that I do. So I'm excited to be on here tonight with you guys.
Yeah, that's awesome. I'm actually afterwards, I'd like to hear more about your work in Nigeria, because Jeff, when did we start discussing Nigeria? It's got to be over a year ago, right? And everybody said, "Oh, there's nothing going on in Nigeria. There's no Christian."
It's going on for a long time. We were talking about the Boko Haram and all those morons.
Yeah. So I'll be interested to hear more on that, Sam. So I do want to make a quick announcement. So our private element server is up and running. It's built on the same code base as Signal, but has way more features like webinars and scales to a couple 100,000 members. And for those of you new to our podcast, I come from the world of high-tech, programmer, systems, and network engineer. I've been studying the GitHub for Signal as well as Element for quite some time now. There are no backdoors, which is why we work off of that platform. However, what we've done with Element is built a complete platform that we own, we operate, that is completely free of big tech and big brother censorship, no shadow banning, no suppression, no deplatforming. So because we're ahead of schedule, you'll see some invites going out next week if you're an SDN Guardian, but I think we're going to get through the soft launch quicker than we anticipated, especially thanks. I want to make sure I thank the right people here. I want to thank Ro, Jason P., Tim Smith, and I know I'm forgetting some other ones, but there's a bunch of people in the community that have been helping with this. So before we get into the main topic tonight, which is the next episode in our Long War series titled Faith and Freedom Underground, let's do the conflicted question of the night. For those of you not aware, conflictedthegame.com, 14 card games that are set in post-apocalyptic scenarios. Most of the questions have some element of morality to them, hence the name Conflict. I'm going to read this off now. The three of us will answer them at the end of the podcast. We want to see your answers in the live chat or the comment section down below. With the collapse of modern civilization, the masses had to take care of their own problems. If suddenly there were no laws or government, how do you think the people should deal with today's misdemeanors, minor crimes, such as property damage, theft, harassment, and fraud? That's an interesting question. I'm gonna have to ponder that. I don't know about you guys, but I always revert back to, we should probably just wipe all the laws off the board and just go back to the 10 Commandments and we'll be good to go at that point. A lot easier. So speaking of fraud, let's get one funny video out of the way first from Gunther Eagleman here. And he says, LMAO, this wins the internet today, 39 seconds is what it is.
It's so-called must be all this ice on my wrist. I am the captain now. Ayo, bitch, give me that tax money. On conduct fair businesses. One day if you study hard enough, you can be just like me. Who cares? Send those taxes my way. I just bought another man.
So, I mean, y'all are welcome to comment on Sam and Jeff, but I got to tell you, Sam, a while ago, I went to 3 different AIs and I said, why do all Somalis look the same? They all chastised me for being racist. Then they went on to say the range was 85 to 90% homogeneity, essentially meaning the exact same genes for 85 to 90%. So they supported my argument in the first place. But Sam, I don't know if you want to comment on this or not. It might be a little off color for a pastor.
Yeah, well, you know, the thing that I picked out of it that's funny and sad at the same time is that it says, you know, send all the taxes my way. Who cares? Send all the taxes my way. And unfortunately, that there's truth right there in this. That's really the mindset that's happening right there to my northern neighbor there in Minnesota with all the Somali things. I've got a friend who's actually up there in Minneapolis right now on family vacation. And, you know, he just texted me and he said, unfortunately, I think Christianity's losing when I look out around here because all of the indigenous, maybe I'll use that word, right? So we can get the woke props, the indigenous Americans, those who are here. I'm not talking about Native Americans. I'm talking about those who are born and raised Americans, not illegal aliens or immigrants. But they only have like at most 2 children. And he says, you know, you go and you look out and all of the immigrants, whether they're legal or illegal aliens, they've got all kinds of children there. And so they are trying to take over with cultural jihad. And at the same time, we're funding them to take over our nation. It's crazy. It's crazy what's going on.
You're going to fit in just great here, Pastor Sam. Jeff, I don't know what you think, but Sam kind of sounds like a professional radio broadcaster to me. Maybe I should just turn the podcast over to him.
Yeah, no, and the whole homogeneity thing is not that unusual in isolated groups, isolated cultures. And Somalia for a long time was isolated. It was a desert community. And to be honest, there was no reason for anyone to invade it. And so China, in contrast, was always being invaded because there was a lot of wealth there. We're talking 1,000, 2,000 years ago. The Huns and the Mongols and everybody went in there. And then the Chinese had go ahead, marry the Chinese woman. Your kid will be half Chinese, and their kid will be 3/4 Chinese, and their kid will be 7/8 Chinese. And effectively, we're going to breed you into oblivion, which is what they did because they had so many people. Somalia, nobody invaded. So nobody really interbred with them because there was nothing in Somalia worth taking. And so it became a much more isolated culture, and they interbred. It's like living on an island community that doesn't communicate with any other islands. But it was a landlocked island, separated by vast deserts. So, but yeah, when you get that, you lose the advantage of refreshing the gene pool.
I did not know that. I appreciate the education on that, Jeff. That's very interesting. So I know you were busy hosting a New Year's Eve party last night, and I had Mike Glover on because it was Wednesday night. And I asked him, I said, how much danger is Nick Shirley in? And he mentioned that he has actually spoke to Nick Shirley's security detail and said significantly. So Nick posted this earlier today. This is not a joke. They actually want to kill me. In all seriousness, please include me in your prayers. So this person named Joey Mountains posts this picture, says this is going to be you on April 27th, 2026 in a muddy ditch alongside the highway. Enjoy your last couple of months, buddy. So the same crew that has celebrated Charlie Kirk's assassination, not surprisingly, are targeting a 23-year-old who is functioning way beyond his years, in my opinion. Sam, I'd love to hear what your thoughts are on Nick Shirley 23-year-old young man revealing the ginormity of this.
Yeah, obviously he's doing a good job of revealing what's going on here, but this is the response of the left. It's really demonic. I remember the first time speaking out, it was for me personally, I was in my mid-20s, about 25, a little older than 23, and they had Pride Fest coming in here to Iowa. I was on the eastern side of the state at that point, and I got up and I kid you not, I gave like the cheesiest, "Hey guys, come and join me and do a prayer meeting. We're going to pray for fasting and repentance." I mean, it was nicer than Charlie Kirk, if you could get that. And I had death threats that were coming in. I had one guy pull me over and he was like, "Hey man, I've infiltrated these Antifa groups. They're talking about coming and killing you." This is just the response of the left. And we need to wake up for those who are normal Americans, those who are conservative Americans, those who care about Christian values, and realize this is a spiritual war and they want to come and kill us because their demons want to see us dead. And so this is, unfortunately, this is par for the course.
Yeah, very well said, Sam. Jeff, I was going to play a video and then get your comments, but I just remembered this video has a fair bit of profanity in it. I'm not going to play it out of respect for the pastor, but go ahead and pick up where he left off as far as Nick Shirley and his security.
Yeah, and because that's the left. When they can't win the argument, they resort to violence. And, we saw it with Charlie Kirk. But the other thing that's amazing me is you're seeing the daycare fraud stories. They missed it. The mainstream media completely missed it or chose not to report it. Now, what are they doing? They're investigating the investigators. They're investigating this kid who uncovered all this stuff and questioning his methods. All he did was walk up there and knock on their door. They found their address off the government website and went to look and says, "Wow, there are absolutely no kids in any of these quote unquote daycare centers." And now they're investigating him. I don't know what they expect they're going to find, that he was really the lost child of the Hitler Youth or something, but he's just a quiet Mormon kid, and he's conservative. He doesn't drink. He doesn't do drugs, he put that thing. I says, basically, I'm boring. I'm a 20-something-year-old, non-drinking, non-smoking, non-drug taking virgin, because I want to save myself for marriage. So good luck. But they can't handle it. And if they can't discredit him, they're probably going to try and kill him.
Yeah, very, very well said, Jeff. So I just took the link to this video on X and sent it out to all 9 platforms that we're broadcasting to. Fair warning, if you have youngins around, there's a fair bit of profanity in it, but it's essentially one of these Somalis telling Nick that he's sensationalizing and that there are going to be Somalis who are murdered and so on and so forth, and get the out of our neighborhood. He handled it extremely well. So moving to the next one. Meanwhile, in Cologne, Germany, German streamer Kitty sets out with the intention of showing that women can walk safely through the Western streets that are occupied by new foreign men. Ends up being attacked twice on the stream. 20 seconds.
Mit Handschuhe auf. Besser ist. Au! Au! Fuck! Au! Ah, ich habe irgendwas abbekommen. Ich habe irgendwas gegen den Kopf bekommen. Au! Ich glaube, wenn ich so 2 Meter Tür schwer Schrank wäre, hätten die das nicht gemacht. Ah, schon wieder, Alter! Wichser!
Wow. I mean, a continued downward spiral in Europe. Sam, I'll come to you first for your thoughts on the weaponization of migration that is threatening to completely wipe out Europe as we've known it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's a red-green axis. It's the alliance of the communists and the alliance of Islam is what's happening. And the reason they can align is because they have the same goals. And ultimately, Karl Marx said his goal in life was to destroy destroy capitalism and to dethrone God. And that, of course, is the same thing that's the same goal of what Islam has, maybe not so much on capitalism, although they certainly do that with their system of government as well. But I mean, it's Sharia law. It's these immigrants that are coming in. They're Muslims. There's no such thing as a Muslim extremist or as an Islamic extremist. They're either a follower of Islam or you're apathetic. And so when they see someone walking down the street who's unveiled like that, of course they're going to attack because it goes against their law. They have no respect for women. They believe that this is all about submission. That's what Islam means. And so this is what they're trying to do. They're trying to destroy not just Western civilization, but Christianity, which of course Western civilization is rooted in Christianity, and that's why they hate it. We deal with this all the time in Nigeria when we're looking at this, not necessarily in that direct way, but it's this idea of it is a cultural and even physical jihad there in Nigeria. That's what's coming to Europe. They're just Muslims are doing what Muslims do.
Yeah. So, Jeff, it's been great working with you. I'm now going to step down, let Sam just take over the Survival Dispatch News podcast. He's very well spoken. Jeff, your thoughts on Europe again, Germany in this case?
Yeah, I mean, the whole red-green thing, and it's actually green, red, green. You've got Islam, you've got communism, socialism, and now you've got the environmentalist nutcases as well. Which kind of fall into the Antifa crowd as well. But what I think what people don't seem to understand is, yeah, they're together now, and that will only last until they have defeated who they think are their enemies, which are, conservatives and normal people. And then the Muslims are going to just slaughter the communists, because the communists are godless heathens, even worse than us. They are just an ends to a mean. They will use them, they will milk them for every bit of money, every bit of support, every bit of, helping them, gain the levers of power. And once they have those levers of power, do you think they're going to give a rat's patoot about the socialists or the environmentalists? No, they will be the next group they turn on. And, you saw it not with the Muslims so much, but you saw it with the communists in Spain in the 30s. There was this grand alliance, the quote unquote Republicans in Spain. They were socialists, they were the anarchists, they were the communists. There were some, Democrat type people, Marxists, there were the Trotskyists. And they basically killed each other off. And they got to the point where, they had so weakened themselves that, Francisco Franco just had to wait. And then they kind of wiped each other out, and he went in and took over the whole country. But that is what you're going to see, except it won't be the communists killing off everybody else. It'll be the Muslims will get in there and let the communists kill everybody else off, and then they'll kill off the communists.
Yeah. Well, how many times have we heard, Jeff, from guests and intel sources that they look at groups like Antifa as useful idiots?
Yeah, and that's a term created by Lenin, but the Muslims, the Islamists have picked up that playbook and they're running with it.
I did not know that. Thank you. So check out this next one. Mario Nafal says the Freudian slip heard around Minnesota. If childcare is cut, I'm unable to work or go to school. I understand fraud is bad. The way she physically recoiled from her own words tells you everything. That reaction is an embarrassment. That's someone who just realized they said the quiet part out loud. 26 seconds.
If childcare is cut, I'm unable to work or go to school. I understand fraud is bad.
Wow.
I'm sure she's thinking, who put that in here? That's not what I wrote. Who put that in there? And some PR person said, okay, we needed to say fraud is bad, to assuage the law and order crowd.
Right.
They don't believe it.
No, not at all. Sam, your thoughts on that?
Sounds like they surrendered the premise right there with that Freudian slip. And If you're going to make something like that, you got to go with it and just keep going. But she didn't know what to do. Either that or her script ran out. I'm not sure, but that was pretty bad.
It was really, really bad. I don't know if you want to add anything else to that, Jeff. I mean, that was a really brutal performance.
Freud is a vicious taskmaster.
Well said. So this next one, here's some more good news. Harvard University called for the abolishment of the white race in their magazine, Harvard Magazine, with an article titled "Abolish the White Race." Make no mistake about it, we intend to keep bashing the dead white males and the live ones and the females too, until the social construct known as the white race is destroyed, not deconstructed, destroyed. How is it even possible that this is legal to say in America, Sam?
Yeah, well, I mean, obviously, it's critical race theory as to what's being presented here, and the sad thing about critical race theory is that it's rooted in postmodernism, and postmodernism thought it's cannibalistic, and so once they destroy the white race, that they come out and they're just going after that, who's going to be the next oppressors? That's what I want to know. How many marks on the intersectionality scorecard do you need to have in order to remain oppressed? It's unfathomable, but that this is still going out, that this is still being used, but unfortunately, it is. And this is why we really need to be rooted in realizing that we are not the oppressed ones in this world. We can't have a victim mindset or try to compete in the victim Olympics. And I mean, can you imagine if in the 1700s, when our founding fathers were fighting against the redcoats, if they came out and they were like, you know what, instead of the Declaration of Independence and these list of grievances, and then they say, so we're going to go to war. They're like, you know what, we are. We're these great victims of these made up constructs and all of this kind of thing and then they came out to fight with their transgender degrees or whatever, or gender theory degrees, because that's what this is heading towards, and it's just ridiculousness. This is just a symptom of people who haven't stopped and thought for 2 seconds here.
Yeah, well said, Jeff.
Well, you see it. Yeah, he's right. And absolutely that once they pick a victim, they pick someone they're going to eliminate. And then once they eliminate them, they'll turn their attention elsewhere. Again, we saw this in the Soviet Union. First, it was the royalty. Then it was the Democrats, the real Democrats, then, with the Duma. And that's when the Bolsheviks took over. And then the hardliners took over from the Bolsheviks, and they eliminated the Bolsheviks. They had these guys, Bukharin and all, they put on show trials and ran them out and executed them. In South Africa, when the black population kind of took over, of course, their first target were whites. And, they couldn't get rid of all of them because they kind of kept the wheels on the economy. But you're seeing they're marginalizing them. They're all, most white South Africans with any brains are leaving the country. They went after the white farmers, even though they provide all the food. But another group that they're targeting, people don't really talk about it much, are what in South Africa are referred to as colored people. Now those aren't blacks. Those are South Asians. Those are Indians, Bangladeshis, Pakistanis, and they are kind of the merchant class, because for the longest time, they really weren't allowed to own property under apartheid system, so they became businessmen. But a lot of them became very wealthy. And so now when the black majority has gone after the whites, they've pretty much marginalized them. And now they're saying, okay, who else is above us? They don't ask why they're above us. They just look at who else is above us economically, educationally, or whatever. And so those are the next. And here, if they get rid of, deconstruct, eliminate, marginalize white people in America, I can guarantee you the next group are going to be Asians. And then after that, it will be South Asians.
Yeah, unfortunately, you are 100% right. So there have been a couple stories today with regards to law enforcement uniforms. There's one on 30 some odd uniforms I'm not going to comment on because the story is not solid, but this information from Tony Saruga this is completely unrelated. 19 NYPD uniforms are missing from a New York dry cleaner. And last month, 200 NYPD complete police vehicle vinyl stickers went missing from a vendor. So, Sam, we've been discussing this at length because it's a common MO for jihadi terrorists to pose as law enforcement. So we've had a record number of National Guard armories broken into, uniforms stolen. There are just countless instances like this over the past 18 plus months of police and paramedic uniforms being stolen. And essentially, this is a standard MO for these guys, right? Like 10/7 in Gaza or Israel, pardon me, where the people who were paying attention saw the paragliders coming in with the jihadis with rifles. They ran to their cars, got in their cars, tried to exfil, and two Hamas guys dressed up as Israeli cops said, whoa, 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 it's not safe to go past this point. And then their buddies jumped out of the bushes and slaughtered them all in their cars. This is very disconcerting stuff, and I won't go down that rabbit hole yet, Sam, but I'll give you the full spiel on it when we go into the first segment of tonight's topic. But I'd like to get your thoughts on, well, I'd like to hear your experiences. What are you aware of as far as jihadis posing as first responders?
Yeah, so I mean, this goes directly back to their ideology and what they believe. It's called, and I'm sure you know, it's taqiyya. For those who are listening, Muslims essentially, they believe that lying and deceiving is okay. Not only okay, it's encouraged in order to advance Islam. And so that's exactly what they're doing here. They're just following the Quran. They're following the hadiths in the way that they need to go in order to actually live out Islam in a true way. Islam is submission. It's lying. It's murderous. That's the ideology of Islam. And so this is what they're doing. And in Nigeria, we don't deal with as much deception. It's a lot more out in the open, unfortunately, with the Fulani ethnic militia that's coming in and attacking this on the front end. The deception a lot of times in Nigeria that we deal with is on the back end, where they come out and they say this is just a farmer-herder conflict or a tribal clash, when in reality they're shouting Allahu Akbar and they're coming in and attacking and trying to genocide Christians. But they're generally not deceiving up front. It's on the back end that we deal with it mostly.
Sam, while I've got you on screen, quick question.
Yeah.
What do you estimate the death toll was in 2025 for Christians in Nigeria?
Yeah, so we're still counting it up, but it was pushing at least 8,000 of the direct attacks of the Muslims coming in, the Fulani ethnic militia mostly coming in and attacking Christians directly. But those numbers don't count the side effects of the attacks of those who end up getting internally displaced and then end up starving to death. They become refugees inside their own country and end up dying of, like I said, starvation, or end up dying of poor sanitary conditions. And so really it's in the tens of thousands when you look at the full total effect, but the direct attacks probably right around 8,000.
Yeah, it's a big number. Jeff, I know you've spoken on this before, but thoughts on NYPD law enforcement uniforms?
Well, yeah, it's a perfect way to infiltrate. I mean, you look at, if you wanted to attack, the New Year's Eve thing like last night, the only ones allowed in there, or once they filled it up and walked it off, the only ones allowed in and out were police officers, maybe first responders. But if you want to get into a group that has gone through security, is completely defenseless, completely, has no weapons, completely unarmed, that's your crowd. And the only way you can get in there is if you're pretending to be a cop. Thank God it didn't happen last night. But it's one of those things that people look at a cop and their guard goes down. And
generations.
People, I should say, criminals, their guard goes up. Innocent people, their guard goes down. They feel he's here to protect me.
Yeah, generations of outsourcing security, right? So there was a comment went by here. There it is from Manly Thomas. He's one of our diehard followers, Sam. And he says that, hey, Chris, can you please speak to President Trump and get him to hire Pastor Sam as the new director of the FBI. So Manly is awesome. I actually owe Manly an apology, man. I got sidetracked. I have not had a chance to circle back on our signal conversation with regards to Element, but it's at the top of my list when we wrap up the podcast. So next one up, journalists in Washington state are now visiting addresses operating as Somali daycares that are receiving hundreds of thousands of dollars in taxpayer funds, only to find private $500,000 homes at the locations with no sign of daycare operations. 1 minute, 4 seconds.
Oh yeah, I was trying to find the local daycares.
We already know about what's going on.
Mhm.
This is the licensed property. If you have a complaint, go to the state.
Okay, I was trying to find out if you guys are a daycare. I was just trying to see.
You don't have to. Yeah, you don't have to. If you want to know any questions, just go online and ask who you need to ask. But
No, there's nobody online to ask, so I'm just trying to ask you guys.
No, you don't have to ask us anything.
I don't have
If
to?
you have any questions, go
I
to the
do.
state.
I have a question. I was just asking you.
And
Okay, you guys were listed on the website and a bunch of websites, so for daycares. So
Oh, that's what it is. Then you don't need to go door to
it's
door.
yeah, no, you can. Yeah, I have. You can go door to door.
So if you have any questions, go call the child care check, and they'll give you whatever information that you need.
Okay, so you guys aren't a daycare then? They're not a public daycare, right? Okay, I didn't think so.
Don't report our property either.
Oh, I can, yeah. So these ones were really hostile. I just knocked on the door just to see if it was a local daycare listed on the websites. She said contact the state. It's interesting.
Sam, I'm just curious. I'll ask you, just to speculate, how rampant do you think this fraud is? How big do you think this really is, dollars and cents wise?
I think this is huge. What was put on there was 500,000. I bet we only really ever see just a scratching of the surface. I mean, when corruption is embedded in people's ideology, when it's embedded in their morality, it becomes the currency. And that's unfortunately what we're going to be seeing more and more of. That house looked pretty expensive, and it certainly didn't look like a daycare.
Yeah, absolutely didn't. Jeff, I'm curious why we're not hearing about more, government audits, whether it be at the state level or county level. Do you think that those are happening and they're just keeping them on the QT while they gather information, or do you think that they're just completely lackadaisical?
Well, I think it's going to depend on the state. I think this is something that's probably pervasive throughout the country, red states, blue states, because when someone finds a scam that works, it gets replicated. And if there's something that really hadn't been widespread before, states aren't necessarily looking for it. It's like the first identity theft case, they would have said, what, you're pretending to be somebody else? But I think you're going to see in a lot of red states, they're going to crack down and they're going to investigate and they're going to find, that they've been spending way, way, way too much money. But I think the bigger the blue state, the bigger the fraud. For all the grief we give Minnesota, it's a relatively small and a relatively well-run state as far as budgeting and things like that. Can you imagine what's going on in California, Massachusetts, New York, Illinois in particular, Washington State? I know Washington State has a problem with it. They've already found a bunch of the same thing going on up there. And it's probably not just Somalis. I mean, other people, regardless of their ethnicity, will say, well, I can scam the government of $500,000 at relatively low risk. Now, the thing with the Somalis is they have the advantage of being able to scream racism if you ask them any questions. Now, if I opened up a daycare and was scamming the state, and I said, oh, this is racism, you're only doing this because I'm a middle-aged white guy, they would, nobody would care. But these are, they're minorities, they're immigrants, and they'll scream racism, and the knee-jerk response from a big portion of the white population is that, oops, sorry, didn't mean to ask. Yeah, and it's bullshit. It's BS. They need to just go in there with not guns a-blazing, but with computers a-blazing, and just rip those places apart, find out who's cheating. And if you're not cheating, what's an audit going to prove? Nothing. You have nothing to hide. You're okay with it. It's like me. If the IRS audits me, it's like, go ahead. My taxes are pretty darn simple. I'm on a pension. I pay my taxes. It comes out. It goes, that's it. I don't have any fancy stuff to hide things.
Well, Jeff, the way I see it is apparently we've been told over the past few years that math is racist.
Yes.
And you need to be able to do math to do audits. So clearly that means audits are racist as well.
Yes, this is true by extension. It's a good point.
And Vic, thank you for the compliment. You guys provide the best conversation about these important topics. Thank you, Vic. Thank you very much for that. So next one up here, I'm sure some of you have seen this, and Nick Sorter posted this. One of these fake daycares faked a break and enter and claimed they stole all of our student enrollment.
Allegedly faked a breaking and entering.
Yeah, but just like this note says, if you zoom in on the sheetrock was cut from the inside. It was not cut from the out. Like
it wasn't kicked in. It wasn't kicked through. That's for sure.
Yeah. So 43 seconds here
of what they say vandals did. Now, this is where they say the vandals got into the daycare through cinder block and appeared to be unsuccessful.
Holy crap. I just connected the dots, guys. What was that guy's name who escaped from Alcatraz? It's got to be him. He's probably pushing 125 years old now, but it's got
Clint Eastwood. We'll
yeah,
make a movie about it.
Absolutely. So this sheetrock that's been cut here with pegboard behind it, I mean, you have to be like the Alcatraz guys to fit through that small of an opening.
Successful when trying many other ways. The daycare says it appears the vandals first tried to saw into the door of the Family Dollar next door in the shopping center, but that didn't work. The manager claims those who broke in went straight to the office, stealing information of the many children who were taken care of here.
We are not a part of any harmful things that are being said. We have no problem with CCAP, and our licensing has been good. Even the inspections. I want to say no intimidation is going to stop us.
Sam, I'm guessing you're aware, and no word of a lie, by the way, that the average IQ in Somalia is 68. So Tim Walsh and crew has been outsmarted by people that are below the threshold of 70, which technically makes them retards. I think they think we're all retards and that we actually believe this baloney.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, the thing that was interesting, I was trying to see if they had a picture of the men's bathroom to see if there were tampons that were hung up there in the there. But no, the only thing I can think about is why would people want to know so bad who's allergic to peanuts and who's not allergic to peanuts? Because I mean, there's not a whole lot of information that goes into a daycare society, that you're storing there. I don't think you're probably getting their social security numbers and things like that. And if they are, I don't know why they would have that in a daycare.
Yeah, no kidding. Jeff,
it's like breaking into a bank and stealing the deposit slips.
Well, Jeff, just educate me here. What criminal charges should apply in this case to someone who stages a break-in and files a false police report to cover up the fraud?
Well, filing a false police report, then you have obstruction of justice, and then I don't know what the official thing is when you basically waste official resources on purpose. You can't do that. It's just like if you call in a bomb threat and there's no bomb, you get arrested for that too. But this doesn't even pass the giggle test. Why would anyone essentially break into what is probably a cashless business? Because I mean, how many parents pay cash for their daycare? They either write a check or give them a credit card. So it's a cashless business. They didn't even look at the business records. Really, they just took the enrollment records. And I think one of them said they took checkbooks. So they can prove, well, we wrote checks for a bunch of food, which proves we had all these kids, but someone sold the checkbook. This is just insanity. Again, it's like breaking into a bank and stealing blank deposit slips. It's stupid. And only a stupid person would think this makes sense and try to do it.
Yeah, agreed. I want to just quickly address this question here. I don't understand the connection between Palantir and 9/11 2.0. They in cahoots? No, they're not in cahoots. The government is looking for a significant event to happen to justify the deployment of Palantir's tools to essentially take the surveillance state to a whole new level of doing things like pattern recognition. Hey, Sam has been talking to the wrong people and he's been reading the wrong stuff online. And we believe, Palantir believes, that Sam is going to commit this particular crime, and then they will come and arrest you for that thought crime based on the probability of the AI models that Palantir throws out there. And this article here is actually tied in as well. So DHS says real ID, which DHS certifies, is too unreliable to confirm U.S. citizenship. Color me shocked and surprised. So the how this ties in is basically, listen, we can't trust what we have to prove citizenship. So we need all of these new tools that Palantir will provide us to make sure that these people are real Americans. TM Randy Nance, by the way. Sam, your thoughts on DHS coming out with this? In my mind, this is a total head fake.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's definitely a total head fake with that, and pretty much anything that DHS does, I'm not a huge fan of. But when you look at this, this is just kind of the social credit score, and if you take I don't want to say cryptocurrency, but blockchain technology, and you centralize it instead of keeping it decentralized, which then it's really not a crypto or a or blockchain in that sense. Maybe it could still be blockchain, but and you use it and put it centralized in the government's hands. What ends up happening is that they're going to weaponize it against the people, and this is going to cause all kinds of problems. As this is not just a social credit score, but a social prediction kind of a thing. And I mean, all kinds of violations. And I got people who ask me all the time, are you afraid that you're going to get put on a list? And I just kind of smile, and I'm like, well, I'm pretty sure I've crossed that bridge. I'm definitely on the government's list. So
welcome to the club, by the way.
Yeah.
Jeff, your thoughts on the agency that certifies to the federal government.
Yeah.
That their system is functioning.
Think about that. The Department of Homeland Security, which issues the IDs that are supposed to be the penultimate ID to prove you're a real person and a real U.S. citizen, now says, yeah, that stuff it's not worth it. It's not good enough. It's like the United States government saying, okay, you owe me $10,000 in taxes for last year. And you go, okay, here's $10,000 in cash. Oh, no. I don't want U.S. currency that I issue. I want Bitcoin, because that currency is really not that good. It's going to get devalued because we're not going to have a balanced budget, so it's going to go down in value. I mean, how insane is that? I mean, this is this is the security equivalent of the United States government not taking its own currency. This is Homeland Security not accepting the IDs that it itself issues. Yeah,
I personally think this is just a play to say, look, we have to have the tools that Palantir is bringing to the table.
It's and for the person talking about Palantir and 2.0, Palantir isn't going to bring you 2.0. 2.0 is going to bring you Palantir. Just like the Patriot Act did not cause 9/11, 9/11 caused the Patriot Act.
Very well said, Jeff. Thank you for that. Puts a great fine point on it there. So Elon Musk shared this post earlier today. This is what's needed to stop the fraud. I'm just going to play the video instead of reading this. It's 1 minute and 8 seconds.
You have to make the punishment infinitely worse than the crime. And I'm talking about deporting the entire family, denaturalizing the entire family, sending the entire group of them back to Somalia. That's what needs to happen. And anybody complicit and anybody involved in this scam. And until we have a candidate and a person that's willing to do that, then I'm not really interested in voting, if you want me to be honest. I'm really not interested in voting, because why is it that I'm going to vote for a slow rot of my country whenever the solution is so obvious? You can't flip the switch. Yeah, you can. You can easily flip the switch. You just do it. If J.D. Vance does not push for treason with capital punishment against Tim Walz, do not vote for him. If Trump does not deliver that, do not vote for him. Unless the most extreme, dramatic, brutal, aggressive option is on the table, I'm staying home.
Man, he said a mouthful there. I'd love to get your thoughts on that, Sam.
Yeah, he brings up a couple of interesting points. The first one is with the immigration, and certainly it's a major problem. We need deportations. We need, like you said, a lot of these punishments. One of the problems that we're going to see is the same thing that's in Europe, is that we're not having enough babies in order to sustain to sustain a civilization, and that's part of why we're going to see a push for people to come in to bring in more immigration, whether legal or illegal. And so that's going to cause all kinds of problems. It's going to destroy our society and our civilization, as we're already seeing that happen. But he touches on something on who to vote for and who not to vote for. And I just want to bring up that the Bible has the answer to that. Exodus 18:21, it tells us, and it gives us 4 criteria. Those who are able, if they're not able to do the job, don't vote for them. Those who fear God, if they're not people who fear God, those who don't take bribes, and then those who are speakers of the truth, or those who love truth. Those are the four criteria. And so I don't have an issue with looking at this and saying we need to have high standards for those who we vote for, because the reality of it is that we've been voting for people for a long time who don't actually represent our values. And then we go and we're like shocked. Why aren't we getting a government that represents me? Well, it's because we always go and say, you know what, you got to vote for Mitt Romney or the world is going to fall apart. That's what we heard when it came to Barack Obama. Can you imagine here? Because the same people who told us to vote for Mitt Romney are the same people who are saying he's like the worst guy ever. And I'm like going, you told me to vote for him back when I was 18 or 18. And so I just, or 20. And I look at these kinds of things and I'm going, we do need to find some standards. So I think he is touching on some truth. I don't necessarily know if I would agree 100% with the standard he's bringing forth, but having strong standards is something we need to recover with the American people.
Amen. Well said. Jeff, does the scale of this fraud justify mass denaturalization and deportation?
For those involved, absolutely.
Okay.
And people say, you can't denaturalize. Yeah, you can. We've done it. John Demjanjuk was denaturalized because they found out he had been a prison guard for the Nazis in World War II at a death camp. His citizenship was stripped. He was sent back to Germany and sentenced to prison, where he died in prison. And if we find that any of this money is going to, Al-Shabaab or any of the other terrorist groups in that part of the world, you can denaturalize these people and kick them out. For the simple reason is they lied on their citizenship application, because it said you have to attest that you are not affiliated with or a member of a terrorist organization. And if they signed I am not, but then they're sending money to Al-Shabaab, they've lied on the forms. That means they've committed a fraud. Their citizenship was granted based on that fraud, and it can be rolled back. Now, as far as executing Tim Walz, no, I think that's a little bit absurd. But I think when you arrest these people and you can kick them out, and you kick them out en masse, and the ones that you can't kick out, you put them in frickin' Leavenworth and you give them a sledgehammer so they can turn big rocks into little rocks for 20 years. And when that gets out there and that becomes known, then the next guy someone says, hey, I'm starting a daycare. You want to help me out? Enroll your kid. You sign this form. I get the money. We split it. And he's like, no, because Mohammed, you did it to him, and him and his whole family got kicked out of the country, and they haven't been seen since. So yeah, no, I'm not going to do that. You got to make, it's just like, you got to make it more dangerous to be a criminal than a victim, with a concealed carry and things like that. You got to make it more dangerous for them to be the criminal by making the punishment really frickin' severe.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with that part at all. So we've got 2 more news articles here, and then we'll get into the main topic. Somebody made a comment with regards to the Abraham covenant. If you go to our Substack, survivaldispatch.news, I've written 3 articles on that recently, thanks to my brother-in-law who's next level intelligent, 30-year sheriff, deputy, crime scene investigator, SWAT team, 12-year Navy intel expert who ran a desk for a focal point in the Middle East, or Africa, I should say, for terrorism. And he gave me a great education. I know Sam knows way more about it than me, but let's just go there quickly, Sam, just because. So my understanding is Abraham and Sarah couldn't have children because of her age, or so they thought. So he decided to have a child with his Egyptian maid, Hagar, because God had promised, riches upon his children. So he gets Hagar pregnant. She has Ishmael, but Sarah ends up getting pregnant and has Isaac. And then Isaac's lineage can be traced to Jesus Christ, whereas Ishmael's can be traced to Muhammad. But the covenant between Abraham and God was between him and Isaac, essentially, and not Ishmael. It's a really interesting topic. Just give us the highlights of that before we get into the next one, if you don't mind, Sam.
Yeah, absolutely. And you hit on it really well with that idea that God's covenant was with Abraham. It was through Abraham to Isaac, and then passed on to Jacob, and so on and so forth. And looking at that, there was enmity there between Ishmael and Isaac, and it is that concept that from Ishmael's descendants we get a lot of those who ended up have turned towards Islam, and they have this hatred towards Isaac and his descendants, which we look at this. It's interesting that is playing out even today. And so I think about this because I go, the sin of not trusting God's plan there that Abraham committed in trying to get ahead of God's plan, trying to force God's plan in his way, it's led to conflict for centuries, millennia, really here, over a millennia. And I think about that. One sin can carry with it so much problem when it goes forward generation to generation to generation. We have to be careful about what we're doing and making sure that we are obeying the Lord.
Great synopsis there. So Jeff, I'm going to come to you after I play this video, and then we've got one more after that, and I'll come back to you, Sam, on that one. But Islamist gangs attacked Dutch police with fireworks after setting fire to the 150-year-old Vondelkerk Church in Amsterdam, Netherlands. Police were unable to take control of law and order with huge illegal infiltration of Islamist jihadists. 15 seconds. So Jeff, we clearly need fireworks permits, kind of like a concealed weapons permit, but a fireworks permit, right? Because we have to ban all of these weapons.
Well, that's attack with a deadly weapon, because you can be killed with fireworks. And I think the police should be able to respond with lethal force, to be quite honest about it. And you notice it's always a church or a synagogue that gets burned. It's never a mosque. I wonder why that is.
The $64,000 question there. Sam, let me play this next one, and then I'll get your comments as well. So this is from Slavic Networks, The Broken West. This is not diversity. This is state failure. And I'm not going to read the whole thing because we're running a bit long already, but this is 40 more seconds of what we just looked at. Oh, sorry about the beginning there. I got my controls mixed up here in StreamYard. But Sam, your thoughts on that? I mean, it's I think if that happened in the wrong city in America, it could get kinetic really fast.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I was looking at that. The only thing I was thinking of was a lot of the Black Lives Matter and Antifa marches, back in 2020 and things like that. It looks very similar to that. But just to kind of pair this with news as to what Muslims do, just last night, I think when these things were taking place there in just outside of Jos, 12 Christians were killed. And then also in Nasarawa State, another 4 Christians were killed there with jihad, with 45 wounded at least. And so you look at this is happening in Europe. This is happening in Africa. The question is when is it going to happen in America, with all these mosques being built in Texas, with, New York City basically being taken over there by Muslims, with what's happening there in Minnesota with Islam, in Dearborn, Michigan, all of these things. We're kidding ourselves if we don't see the writing on the wall that this is coming for us. This is coming for our streets. This is coming for your town if we don't stand up and win this spiritual war.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. Jeff, final comments before we go into the main topic. You're on mute, by the way, Jeff.
Yeah, I mean, Sam's right. I mean, we've got to recognize this is coming our way. We're not driving towards the iceberg. The iceberg is being propelled towards us, and pretending it's not there is not going to prevent the crash. There will be a clash of cultures. And the question is, are we going to be prepared or be willing to fight for ours?
Yeah, true story, true story. So let me get us over on the other screen here. So moving into the main topic tonight, when Khalid and I wrote this 144 episode series, we predicated on one thing. Everything is in a post 9/11 2.0 world. As long as you have that piece of context, you can watch each video or not. You can watch all of them in order, out of order. It doesn't matter. They all stand on their own. So I'll give you the Cliff Notes version on 9/11 2.0 based on Khalid's intelligence that comes firsthand out of Afghanistan. So 9/11 2.0 represents 10 to 15 jihadi terrorist cells attacking 10 to 15 American cities. So 10 to 15 cells in each of the 10 to 15 cities, just to be clear there, with each of those cells comprised of 4 to 12 jihadis. So let me just make sure that I'm clear on this, because I got that a little bit backwards there. 10 to 15 tier 2 cities being attacked simultaneously. Tier 2 means 100 to 500,000. Each of those 10 to 15 cities has 10 to 15 sleeper cells. Each of those sleeper cells has 4 to 12 jihadis. You're looking at an army of 2,000 to 3,000 trained individuals who have taken a concoction of drugs that essentially diminishes any pain felt by them, diminishes any hunger, shuts down the part of the brain where morality is centered, so that they can basically go hog wild for an extended period of time. So what it will look like is you'll see initial attacks on soft targets like schools, and those attacks will be bad enough in and of themselves, but then they will sit and they will wait for first responders to show up, and then they will launch their secondary and tertiary attacks to kill as many first responders as possible. All of this will be coordinated out of Afghanistan from a command and control center, just like they did in Mumbai in 2008, where the command and control center are watching social media, live TV, live legacy media reports, and having those cells pivot so that they can do the maximum amount of damage as the day goes on. In each of those cities, the jihadis will come back together again at the one and only level 1 trauma center in those tier 2 cities. This is kind of important when you think of a tier 2 city like Buffalo that's on the list. If the tier 1 or level 1 trauma center is sieged, you're now looking at the next level 1 trauma center being a couple hours away in Rochester, New York, which means that people who need immediate care at that level will be triaged, passed over, and essentially unsavable. The psychological impact as well of 10 to 15 hospitals being sieged with 3, 4, 5,000 people in them will be bad enough, but then it will go from bad to worse as they will use those as their home base to broadcast horrific videos of beheading Americans, torturing Americans. And when we get the right teams in place, this is not a job for our SWAT teams. There might be a hope that the SWAT team from LA, which is pretty much the most elite SWAT team in the country, might be able to unsiege one of these buildings. You got to keep in mind, when you're talking quick reaction forces, there's a big difference between being trained to go into a target and kill everything versus going into a target and killing the bad guys and rescuing several thousand hostages at the same time. So the only teams that are trained for that would be a large SWAT team like LA, the FBI's HRT team, so hostage rescue teams. There's 4 of them across the nation, 140 total assets in those groups. But Delta team are the tier 1 assets that are specifically trained to kill the bad guys and save the good guys. However, the hospitals are going to be rigged with things like sarin nerve gas canisters that are in HVAC ductwork. If you're exposed to sarin nerve gas, even if you have a full mask on, as soon as it touches your skin, it goes subcutaneous. You die in 3 minutes. It's a nerve agent. It's not that hard to acquire. And what that basically means is your brain is saying, move your right hand, your left foot's moving. And within a few minutes, the signals through your central nervous system from your brain to your heart to pump blood is going somewhere else. The signal to your lungs to breathe is going somewhere else. And you die a very brutal death as a result of that. They'll also be wearing their new invisible suicide vests with dead man switches. So these invisible suicide vests are made out of plastic with liquid explosive chemicals in them. The only way you can detect them is with millimeter wave scanners. 3% of our airports have them, and I'll give you the AQ airport piece before we dive into the full topic tonight. But a dead man switch means that we send in our assets, they shoot one of these jihadis, the jihadi goes down and explodes automatically, taking out everybody in a relatively close proximity. So the Al-Qaeda piece to this is the, piece in the air. So 1995-ish, we got an intel on a plot put together by OBL, Osama bin Laden, that he had come up with this strategy called Bojanka. And what that meant was that jihadis, Al-Qaeda jihadis in particular, would board planes somewhere like Dresden, Germany. They would put bombs under the seats, liquid bombs. They would then deplane in London. And then when that plane carried on to, let's say, New York City, when it got to a low altitude, they would blow it up. And you have human body parts and luggage and plane parts falling all over the place. So the AQ piece to 9/11 2.0 is number one, to board planes in Europe that are destined for America, to go through security in Europe with their invisible suicide vests. And there's a reason for that I'll touch on in a second. Also, it's Al-Qaeda members here in America walking through security in airports, getting through with their suicide vests on, hijacking planes on the ground because it's a lot easier than in the air, and then having assistance from other jihadis who work at these airports to push the plane away from the jetway and to get them in the air. Same thing. They'll be at low altitude. They will detonate their vests and it'll be beyond horrific. So why would they bother to go through security with these vests on if they have assets on the inside? They want everybody to know after the fact what they did. Because when you have 3% of American airports that have millimeter wave scanners, I don't know what the percentage is globally, but it's not good. That will shut down the entire airline industry for a very long period of time until they come up with a foolproof way of detecting these vests. So that's the picture of what 9/11 2.0 looks like. Again, complex coordinated terrorist attacks on 10 to 15 American cities. So the New Orleans attack a year ago today, inspired, that killed 14 Americans. It wasn't just terrorism. That was actually a carefully planned preview of what coordinated strikes will look like in 9/11 2.0. So imagine vehicles being used as weapons. Imagine IEDs that actually go off, which didn't happen in New Orleans a year ago. Now multiply that out by 4 to 12 jihadis in a cell, 10 to 15 cells in each city, across 10 to 15 cities. And the enormity of this level of attack starts to come into focus. So essentially, you've got a regular weekday. The models show Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday as the most likely. Where did that come from? I didn't pull that out of my ass. There have been over 48,000 Islamic jihadi terrorist attacks since 9/11 1.0. I've taken that information, put it into spreadsheets, sorted through it, pulled the stuff out that relates to CCTAs, complex coordinated terrorist attacks, then fed it into several different models and said, okay, statistically speaking, when would this happen here in America? And all three of them that I fed in, all three models came back and said Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, kicking off 0930-ish on the East Coast and then kind of rolling across the country, not 0930 Eastern, 0930 Central, 0930 Mountain, then 0930 Pacific. It'll be more condensed than that as it moves west across the country. But at 0930 Eastern, global markets are open. People are at work. Kids are in school. Morning planes are in the air. And so they have the ability to do the maximum amount of chaos, confusion, and death by kicking things off at that level. Khalid and I have been sharing some information with y'all in our Guardians chat recently that there's very solid information that the morning of 9/11 2.0, there will be GWAT veteran areas attacked in the middle of the night, most likely, although it could happen during the day as well, where they want extreme retribution against our guys who made them feel scared and unsafe in their countries. And what that essentially is comprised of is 4-man hit teams very specifically going after GWAT vets that they've identified and murdering them sometime between, say, 0200 to 0400 is the most likely window. But again, it doesn't mean that it couldn't happen during the day as well. So again, that just adds another layer of complexity to this attack. And think of the millions of people who will be affected firsthand and disrupted across the country. And I just got to state, like, this isn't some wild movie plot. For those of you who don't know Khalid Muhammad, who's part of our team from Command 11 in Pakistan, he has over 400 assets on the ground. He has contracted with European, Middle Eastern, Asian governments for 20 years. His guys on the ground have penetrated over 80 of 120 known terrorist camps, in Afghanistan. This is really solid firsthand intelligence. And you know what? You don't have to be a rocket scientist to put it together. You have Joe Kent a few weeks ago in front of Congress says, well, we can 100% say that the Biden administration, the Mayorkas DHS, had 18,000 Al-Qaeda and ISIS terrorists in their custody that they released. 2,000 of them came from Afghanistan when the old Biden installation screwed that up. The other 16,000 from other countries. But then when you dive deeper into it, as JJ Carroll has mentioned, my good friend JJ Carroll, who's on our channel frequently, there are at least another 200,000 SIAs that were released into the country by the Mayorkas DHS. That means special interest alien. The only way you get on that list, you are either a terrorist or you are a known associate of a terrorist organization. 9/11 2.0 is not a one and done. So it doesn't take, like I say, a rocket scientist to figure out with these kinds of numbers that 9/11 2.0 itself will be horrendous, but the follow-on attacks, which will happen for generations afterwards, will reverberate through our lives, our children's lives, probably our grandkids' lives as well. So when the dust starts to settle on this, and keep in mind, some of these hospitals, it may take upwards of a week to unsiege them, but people are going to start asking the hard questions. Why has the FBI been telling fusion centers, which were brought about after 9/11 1.0, so fusion centers are in each state. Their job is to disseminate terrorist information from the feds to state and county and local law enforcement. So why is the FBI saying that there's no such thing when the National Counterterrorism Center, headed up by Joe Kent, former Green Beret and very good friends with Mike Glover, by the way, Tulsi Gabbard, and others are saying, this is a very, very serious problem. This is not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. And on that topic, Khalid has recently updated the attack window. Mid-January to mid-March is when this is most likely to kick off. And a lot of people were making predictions over the holidays. Listen, that, just like I said before Christmas and New Year's, the jihadis are not going to, you know, attack something like New Year's Eve on New York City that would radically alter the security posture of law enforcement across the country and minimize the damage they can do with 9/11 2.0. They want kids to be in school. They want to kill our kids. They want to kill. They flat out stated that the goal is at least 50,000 Americans dead. So to have that type of impact, you can't kind of let the, you know, the cat out of the bag by doing a New Year's Eve type of attack. And I can tell you firsthand from Clede and I, we've both been fed a ton of intel from questionable people who thought we were going to be gullible enough to take it and broadcast it to you all as far as Christmas Eve and New Year's Eve attacks. So with that being said, let me get the guys back on stage here. And Sam, I'm going to come to you first. My question for you, especially because you're well traveled, is there anything in your travels that, or anywhere you've been, especially hotspots like Nigeria, make you think that this type of attack could happen and happen soon?
Yeah, you know, absolutely. And in just the travels, you do look at this, and you know what you're describing the whole time you're saying this. What I was thinking is that this attack that you're describing, this fits perfectly with Sunni ideology here, this decentralized ideology, which of course has produced ISIS and Al Qaeda, and that now. On the other side, you know, I do want to say that Islam doesn't track well into our Western minds and into our Western construct of religion, because people think then that Shia Islam is then peaceful or something like that, but really they produce things like Hezbollah, and it's just really centralized versus decentralized, and this is a coordinated decentralized attack that you're looking at, and we do see some of these things happening. It's the same ideology in Nigeria. It's not most of the Christians being killed in Nigeria are not done by ISIS or African ISIS or even Boko Haram today, but they're actually being done by the Fulani ethnic militia, which is the same ideology. And why this is important to understand is that it can go through different groups. It can get into different cultures, different tribes, but the key thing is here is this ideology, and we do see this splinter cell where it's a group here. What's happening in Nigeria is we call it the death of 1,000 attacks. 20 years ago, Nigeria was 70% Christian. Today, it's about 48% Christian, and this has happened from an attack here where 10 people die, one where 15, one where 25, one where 280 die, like at the Father's Day massacre in Yellow-Wada, Nigeria, this past Father's Day. But it's these little attacks, medium attacks, big attacks. But it is these little groups that are attacking, and they're not as coordinated in Nigeria. Nothing's really organized in Nigeria. If you've ever been there, it's just chaos in motion. That's kind of the culture there. But certainly, I think that these small attacks, these splinter cells, this decentralized idea, that is their ideology, and certainly that is feasible. And the decentral aspect of it is being shown in Nigeria really every single day.
Well said. Jeff, my question for you is, can you think of any lessons that we should have learned from 9/11 1.0 that we have not done a course correction on to put us in better stead for 9/11 2.0?
Yeah, that racial profiling works. We've jumped through hoops to not say the obvious out loud, which is this is young Muslim men doing this, period. Khalid, who is a Muslim, says you need to be looking at young Muslim men. Most people who are being honest, whether they're Christians, Jews, or Muslims, will say, if you want to fight terrorism, you need to be looking at young Muslim men. But instead of profiling who the terrorists are, we're searching grannies in wheelchairs. If this was the Irish Republican Army doing this stuff, the first place I would start looking is, okay, let's look at red-haired dudes with an Irish brogue. Okay, but this idea that, okay, because we don't want to say the quiet part out loud, which is these acts are committed by Muslim men, we're not going to look for Muslim men. And it's just asinine. It's like, there's a dog on the loose who's biting people, so we're going to lock up all the horses and all the goats and all the cows, and we're going to put them in cages. And that'll stop the attacks. Well, it's just asinine.
You didn't get the memo. You can't. It's not just the radical jihadis. You can't say anything bad about goats either. They're kind of they're very close, to each other. John Curry made a great comment here. It's criminal profiling, not racial profiling. And that's a fantastic distinction on John's part there. So we're going to move into segment number 2 now, which I titled The Government's Heavy Hand, Martial Law, and Loss of Freedom. So right after the blast fade, expect the feds to roll in with armored vehicles and curfews, locking down whole blocks, calling it martial law for public safety while quietly shredding the Bill of Rights we fought many wars to keep, warrantless searches, speech crackdowns that even hit churches, and patriots and real Americans, TM Randy Nance, hardest. This overreach isn't new. Think of the Patriot Act on crack, but in the fog of fear, it'll feel like trading grandma's apple pie, for a boot on your neck. Somebody actually made that comment, which is why I put it in the brief. As DC uses the chaos to spy on techs, freeze bank accounts, and label Bible studies as extremist just to grab more control. And this is really the part that Jeff put such a fine point on here. Palantir isn't bringing us 9/11 2.0. 9/11 2.0 is bringing us Palantir. And this company's been around for over 20 years, by the way, perfecting probably the most evil corporation bar none. And that's saying a lot when we have, companies like BlackRock and Vanguard, et cetera, et cetera. So here's the kicker. What starts as temporary turns permanent as far as clamping down is concerned. And if we don't push back, echoing the founder's nightmare of government turning protector into predator faster than you can say state of emergency, I mean, it's a super, super slippery slope. So coming back to you, Pastor Sam, I'm wondering, in your guesstimation, how long do you think it would take for martial law to be implemented?
Not long at all. I mean, just go and look back at 2020. We self-governed ourselves into martial law. Most of us, I don't mean that personally towards me. We kept our church open. We defied tyrants. We did that. But I mean, just remember driving down the streets, you see people who are driving wearing 2 masks in a car by themselves. I mean, do they really need government to come in to force them to be at home? No, they can just they can just have Lord Fauci get up and tell them to stay at home, and they've all proven that they will do it. Just a quick memory on this here. I remember being out shopping at Shields, the sporting goods store there, and we were looking, with the stimulus check. I don't know what else you could do with it, but other than get freedom seeds, some bullets and some guns in case if the government's going to give you money, you might as well arm yourself with it. And we were there, and the ammo was just picked over. And I looked at my wife and I said, wow, this is actually encouraging that it's picked over like this, because that means people are buying it. And she said, really? And I said, yeah. And she goes, did you not look around you? We're the only ones in the store not wearing a mask. Yeah, they bought the ammo, but they're all cowards. They're not going to do anything with it until the American people find their virtue, until we find courage, until we really fear God so that we can stand before any man. Martial law it just takes one press conference to get it to come out and to enact it over across the country. And those who are kidding themselves against that, I mean, they were probably in the basement wearing 3 masks by themselves, afraid of COVID, essentially putting themselves under that martial law.
So I haven't done a lot of audience polls tonight, but if y'all love Pastor Sam, put a 1 in the live chat, whatever platform that you're on. He's definitely our people. So Jeff, my question for you is, what are some red flags that a crackdown has gone from being helpful to straight up tyranny?
Well, I think the first one's going to be when they do, you can't go to church. because they're going to come up with excuses. If they're going to say, well, there's the flu, or you guys make too tempting a target for the bad guys. So we're going to limit gatherings to 4 or 5 people, kind of like they did during COVID, which is 100% unconstitutional. First Amendment right, the freedom to gather in public, freedom of assembly. And freedom to assemble in a church is a twofer. And then when the preacher's speaking, he can speak what he wants to speak. That's 3. So you have freedom of religion, freedom of speech. I'm assuming there's a menu of what's going to happen that day. So there's 4. That's freedom of press, and then freedom of assembly. And so when they start just wholesale violating the Bill of Rights under the guise of we're doing it to protect you, yeah, that's when you know.
Quick refresher, Jeff. It's been a while since we've touched on this topic, but what can sheriffs do to push back against this?
They can quite simply refuse to enforce any of the edicts. First of all, federal government doesn't have the authority really to tell a sheriff to do what he wants, to do what they want. The sheriff is, he's bound by his oath to follow the Constitution, not what the federal government says. He is not a federal employee. He is an elected official of the county or whatever the jurisdiction is. And we were fortunate. We had Mark Lamb was our sheriff when all this nonsense was going on. And Mark just said, yeah, we're not closing down businesses. We're not going to keep people at home. We're not going to close churches. We're not going to arrest people for going outside. Yeah. None of that's going to happen. And, and thing is, if your sheriff's not doing it and your local chief of police thinks he's going to, it's not going to fly, because people are going to go, you know what? I'm following the sheriff's edict right now. I don't care what you say, because what you're saying is unconstitutional. And what you need to do is go to them and say, where in the Constitution does it give you the authority to do this?
And God bless.
They can't find it because it isn't there.
Yeah, God bless our good friend, Sheriff Mark Lamb. Yep. He's an awesome, awesome guy. So moving into segment 3 is titled Awakening the Faithful, Christian Warriors Rise. When the sirens stop and the suits start squeezing, that's when quiet churchgoers and backyard grill dads turn into Christian warriors, ditching pews for prayer circles that double as strategy sessions, fueled by that unshakable faith that says tyranny bows to the Almighty every time. These aren't Cape Crusaders. They're everyday believers grabbing Bibles and flags, seeing the real enemy, not just in the attackers, but in the power grabs that follow, sparking a spiritual fire that links rural preachers with urban vets and resistance rooted deep in 1776 grit and gospel truth. As networks hum to life, this awakening isn't about revenge. It's raw defiance, proving that when government's gun is to freedom's head, faith steps up as the shield that turns scared folks into soul-saving standouts ready to reclaim what is theirs. So, Sam, coming to you first, I'd like to get your thoughts on like a Bible story or verse that fires up Christians when staring tyranny in the face.
Yeah, absolutely. The first thing that comes to mind is Joshua 1:9, where it says, have I not told you to be strong and be very courageous, for the Lord your God is with you wherever you go. And, I think about this. You touched on it there when you said 1770s there of going back this. We need the Black Robe Regiment today. We need preachers to put on the black robe well, they're already putting on the black robe, but to be like John Peter Muhlenberg, who, preached a sermon back there in 1776 of saying there's a time for this, a time for that. There's a time for peace. There's a time for war. He takes off his black robe, has a revolutionary uniform there, and he signs up 300 of his men to go in to fight the Revolutionary War. That's what we need. We need pastors who are strong and courageous, knowing that God is with them wherever they go. And so therefore they're marching forward as Christian soldiers. Unfortunately, today we've got too many pastors that are part of the Pink Cardigan Brigade instead of the Black Robe Regiment. And we need to get that Black Robe Regiment back.
Sam, another question. What's the first move that you would make in your community to rally believers without drawing heat?
Yeah, I think it starts at that local assembly. That's why what was attacked and what Jeff even brought up there with shutting down churches is so important, because the assembly, the freedom to assemble, it's a linchpin right between the freedom of speech, between the First and Second Amendment. It's there in the First Amendment, but it really connects the two because that peaceably assemble is really where we get that linchpin in order, where we can actually have the right to bear arms, to create a militia, to stand against a tyrannical government. And really that needs to happen there in the church. We need the local church. And it shouldn't just be, hey, we come and we sing songs and we do whatever we do and then we go home, but we need to be invested in each other's lives. We really need churches that bring people together, that are working together. And we need to have these discussions inside the church. The pastor needs to be presenting these things. I've had patriot groups in our church before. We've got, I call them prepper groups and things like that. We need those kinds of groups in our church, but actually in the local assemblies. These are the kinds of things that we need, the really practical steps that we can take of just meeting together under that shared banner and discussing these things to help neighbors out, to make plans, and then to execute those plans.
Thanks, Sam. So, Jeff, coming back to you, first question or no statement, I guess, is that when you were talking about the IRA, you were essentially describing Pastor Sam, and I've asked you to be nice to our new friends, not do stuff like that. Okay.
Well, yeah, I would pull him into secondary immediately if I was looking for IRA, because
he's red hair, he's
Caucasian. Just needs the brogue. He just needs the Irish brogue.
Yeah. Well, anyway, moving on to the next part here. Similar question for you, Jeff. You're not a pastor, but what's the first move you would make in your community to try and rally people to stand up for themselves and fight back against the tyranny?
I want to convince people to basically hold a public open air meeting where you're basically getting out there to the authorities, in front of the authorities, saying, we will not comply because your orders are illegal and unconstitutional. And if you get a big enough group, they can't arrest all of you. If there's 10 cops and there's 200 people, what are they going to do? If those 200 people said, yeah, we're not going to do that. It's just the law of large numbers. They're not going to make it. So, yeah, you've got to get enough people. You need to start and get bigger and bigger and bigger, because they're going to figure out the first time there's 2 cops and 20 guys, they're going to say, okay, we can't really pull this off. So next time they bring 20 guys, you bring 100. And before they're going to go, okay, now we've got the entire police force against the entire town. These are and you remind them, say, you work for us. We don't work for you. You don't work for the mayor. You work for us, because we elect the mayor. We elect all of you. And, I was a government employee. I used to go to people when I would talk to them. I say, look, I work for you. Your taxes pay my salary. So I'm not going to do anything that's not in the best interest of my country. But you need to remind people of that. Remind them who in the heck they work for.
Right. I appreciate that, Jeff. G-Mark says, great discussion. Thank you. By the way, thank you for the tip, G-Mark. Where is Sam Jones pastoring? A good pastor is hard to find. Do you want to share that, Sam?
Yeah, absolutely. Abundant Life Christian Fellowship. They're in Humboldt, Iowa. So I'll throw it in the. I'm following it here. I'll throw it in the chat. Our website. They're on YouTube if that works.
Where is Humboldt relative to, say, Cedar Falls, where I grew up?
Yeah, you grew up in Cedar Falls.
Born and raised. Well,
my wife's from Cedar Falls, and I pastored there for about 10 years in Hudson, which is just south of Cedar Falls. But we're about 2 hours straight west of, and a little bit north of Cedar Falls. We're 20 minutes or 20 miles north of Fort Dodge, if that helps.
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, appreciate that. So that's 3 segments down. We got 2 segments left to go. Just want to give a quick shout out to our sponsors. So carnivalt.com, for those of you who are new, this is freeze-dried, 100% American meat, no mRNA, no antibiotics, no histamines. This bag here came with 6 ounces of beef in it, reconstitutes to 1.5 pounds. It takes 5 to 10 minutes to reconstitute. Don't pay attention to the USDA label saying it takes longer than that. It doesn't. The beef industry has been under attack for years now, and this is a killer way to protect yourself against what they're doing to beef with chemicals and other things, not to mention the price volatility. Our current herd today, national cattle herd, is half of what it was in 1982. But if you go to carnivalt.com, and I'll put a link in the live chat in a second, and you order something, use code EATMEAT, all one word, to get 10% off. I want to thank the guys at Carnivalt for essentially turning my dogs into crackheads. When I open this up, the dog treats, they go absolutely ballistic, insane. And back to protecting yourself, by the way, if you sign up for a Carnivalt subscription, there's no 10% discount because they've carved the margin to the bone. And it's really and truly the best way to protect your food supply and ensure you've got high quality meat, because anybody who's an athlete, including myself, I competed on the world stage multiple times, set multiple world records in powerlifting. You are what you eat. And if you eat high quality protein like beef and chicken and pork as well, but mostly beef, it pays dividends in your results, you know, when you step into a competitive role. I also want to give a shout out to our friends at Wasatch Wagyu. My God, these guys, this is total crack cocaine for human beings. This is the best jerky I've ever had in my life. Look at how, you know, flexible this stuff is. Their dill pickle flavor is terrible. Do not order the dill pickle flavor. They've promised to send all the dill pickle just to me. I will cover it for the team. I will take the hit and eat all of the dill pickle, which just so happens to be their most popular flavor. But they've also given us a special code just for 1 week and 1 week only. And that's SD25, 25% off at wasatchwagyu.com. I'll put a link to that in the live chat as well. Yes, they sell Wagyu beef that gets shipped in dry ice. And somebody mentioned, you know, it was like $70 to ship it to Alaska. It's actually $150 to ship it to Alaska. I spoke to Greg about this, and he's been subsidizing that. It's really not his e-com business. He sells that beef at a local farmer's market in Heber, Utah on weekends. This is his e-com product, and it is off the chain. I kid you not. You try this once and you'll be hooked. My wife chastised me and said it's not a snack, so I started making sandwiches out of it. And then she actually came up with the idea to put it on charcuterie boards. Then I mentioned it to Greg from Wasatch Wagyu. He's like, yeah, we put it on charcuterie boards all the time. So you can't beat it with a stick. It's that good. And again, I'll get those links out to you shortly. So segment number 4, I titled Forging Underground Alliances, Networks of Faith and Patriotism. So out of sight in basements and backwoods barns, patriots start wiring up encrypted chats on apps like Element. We just built an Element server for our community that you can't be deplatformed from. You can't be suppressed. It's as secure as it gets, and it's our server. And it be coming from a high-tech background, being a programmer and a systems and network engineer, there are no back doors in it either. I've studied the source code at length. So anyway, swapping tips on safe houses from old churches to neighbor garages, building a web of mutual aid that dodges Big Brother's eye while sharing food, ammo, and encouragement. This isn't lone wolves howling. It's tight-knit crews of dads, moms, and ministers linking arms across the country using burner phones, coded signals to coordinate supply drops, prayer vigils, turning scattered fear into solid front that government hacks can't crack, which, by the way, Dr. Mike and I are this close to releasing our new update on comms. It covers everything from the most basic to the most advanced and everything in between. A lot of focus on shortwave HF, which is the only true Walking Dead solution that will allow you to communicate with people around the country and around the world. But by keeping it grassroots and God-centered, these alliances grow tough as nails, proving that when the grid goes dark, real connections born from trust, you know, not tracks, keep the fight alive and the free folks fed until liberty's light breaks through again. So, Sam, I don't know how technical you are. It wouldn't surprise me if you are. Do you have any favorite encrypted apps?
You know, it sounds like I need to change my favorite encrypted app because Signal is what I've been using, but it sounds like I need to be moving over to Element here pretty soon. From what I'm hearing on this show, because that sounds like you guys know what you're doing.
But let me just, no, you're good with Signal. So Signal is open source, meaning you get all the blueprints to the code. So it's stored on what's called a GitHub. There are no backdoors in Signal. There's never been a vulnerability in Signal. When people say, oh, there was this vulnerability in Signal, it was always a phishing attempt where somebody was socially engineered to give up their credentials. That applies to any app. That has nothing to do with the code, right? The reason we're moving our community from Signal to Element is, number one, we have full control over it. It's our server. Number two, it's based on the same open source code base as Signal. Number three, Signal barfs when you hit 1,000 users, sometimes even less than that. Element scales to over 200,000 people in each room, and it also has all kinds of cool features like webinars and stuff like that. But using Signal is good. I'm glad that you're using that. So let me ask you another question then. Do you have any suggestions on people who are in harm's way, especially our GWAT vets, as far as finding somewhere safe to go?
Yeah, absolutely. Finding a local church, especially one that shares the values, it's worth moving to. People move all the time for jobs. They move all the time for family and things like that. We need to be moving where our values are shared. Just another quick COVID, memory. It's hard to believe we're coming up on 6 years since COVID here in a couple months. But one of the things that we did was we organized, because our ladies would go to the grocery store and they would get intimidated by people who would, be mask Nazis. And we are very much against being forced to mask. And so it had other things as well. And so we would get groups to go together. And like you said, when you're in a group together, or I believe Jeff said this here, they can't arrest you all. They can't go after you all. And, that one assistant manager Nazi that was there at the grocery store, well, she's probably not going to go after, a group of 10, 12 people who aren't masked as they're walking at the same time. But getting to a place where there's shared values, and the best place to do that is a local church.
Very, very well said. Jeff, before I ask you a question, go ahead and give our audience an update on the mask, how many microns the filters are, and how big or small the viruses are.
Yeah, this is for an N95, and the numbers I'm using are from the N95 manufacturers and from the National Institutes of Health when it comes to the virus. An N95 mask, the smallest pore size on an N95 is 3 microns, which means any particle larger than 3 microns should be filtered out. The virus, the COVID virus, is between 80 and 120 nanometers across, which means 30 COVID viruses could hold hands and walk through the smallest pore on an N95 mask and never touch the sides. That is the equivalent of trying to keep out mosquitoes with a chain link fence. It is a waste of time. It will stop small particulates. It will stop water droplets if someone sneezes, that kind of thing, but it will not filter out something as small as a virus. It'll
awesome.
filter out bacteria. Someone's got bubonic plague and they sneeze on you, it'll stop, Yersinia pestis virus, or Bacillus anthracis virus, because they're bigger, but it will not stop viruses. I'm sorry, Bacillus anthracis bacterium.
Thank you, Jeff. Yeah, I appreciate the update on that. I got to ask you, when you're building networks like we're discussed in this segment, what do you reckon's tougher, finding reliable people or keeping secrets tight? You can say both.
Secret's tight, because if you've got 20 people and one of them, they don't have to be evil. They can just be a blabbermouth. So you can have 20 people who believe in the program and believe that that what they're doing is right and that they're going to follow the Constitution, not what some local politician says. But if you get one guy who talks too much, you've lost your operational security right there.
Yeah, well said, well said. So that's the end of segment 4. So we'll now pivot into the final segment 5, which I titled Defending the Soul of America, Faith, Freedom, and the Founders' Warning. By the way, thank you, Manly Thomas, for the very generous donation. I appreciate it, brother. Fast forward past the rubble, and it's clear the battles for America's beating heart, those God-given rights the founders bled for in 1776, now under siege by a system flipping crisis into change, but believers hold the line with prayers that echo Lexington's shots. This push isn't just hunkering down, it's reclaiming the soul by living out that revolutionary spirit where faith fuels the fire to teach kids the Constitution like Ketchum, call out tyrants like prophets, and build communities that outlast any decree from on high. In the end, when the smoke clears and history judges, it'll be these underground faithful who prove the founders right. Liberty's no gift from DC. It's a divine duty we guard with every breath, ensuring tyranny crumbles under the weight of unbreakable American resolve. So, Sam, I'm curious what your thoughts are as far as like channeling 1776, vibes and running with that to essentially fight back against the tyranny that we know is coming. Patriot Act 2.0 and Palantir is going to do more damage than the attacks themselves do.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that we do need to get back to that spirit of 1776. 100%. It was John Muhlenberg and Jonathan Mayhew, who is going for, who is a pastor in the colonies, actually about 10 years before, he passed away about 10, 15 years before 1776, died kind of unexpectedly, but he preached one of the best sermons that I've seen on Romans 13. And he was basically calling out the tyranny of England back then. And it's so important that we understand these kinds of things, that 1776, that spirit was not lit in a legislative hall. It wasn't even lit by guys like George Washington. It was lit by the pulpits. It was that's where the brush fires were started, and that's where Christianity was the driving force in that revolution. The top 3 quotes from our founding fathers, if you go and you look at this here, the sources that they cited, the third one was Blackstone and common law. In looking at that, and if you go and you look at that, he says that any law that would go against divine law or against the Bible, it's disregarded. It's not a legitimate law anyway. And so, I mean, it had a biblical foundation there. And I mean, John Adams was essentially the Blackstone of America there in 1776. But then you had Montesquieu, there's the number 2, but the number 1 citation of our founding fathers, it was the Bible itself. America was founded as a Christian nation. We have a Christian push from America, and that's the only way to truly fight tyranny, is to recognize that there is a supreme ruler above everyone. That's why the prince is under the law, lex rex, that the law is over the prince. It is because that the lawgiver is God himself. And we have to understand these kinds of concepts in order to truly fight tyranny. Unfortunately, if we don't recognize Christianity and we just want to go into fight with freedom, we end up in a French Revolution, which always ends into chaos and at the end of a guillotine. But true liberty is rooted in the law of God.
So, Pastor Sam, if you'd like to come back in the future anytime, I'd love to have you back. Our audience has made a lot of complimentary comments on you, and Manly's pushing hard for you to be the new FBI director to replace Kash Patel. I second the motion. Jeff, I've got a couple questions for you, but how do you pass down America's history and love for liberty to the next generation when all levels of schools are indoctrinating them to hate our country.
Yeah, you got to teach your kids the truth of what happened, and the miracle that is this country. And I have a book. It's in a pile over here. I can't get it right now, but it's about 3 revolutions, one that worked, one that didn't, and one that was stillborn. And they all happened at the same time in the late 1700s. And it was the American Revolution, the French Revolution, and the Russian Revolution that was aborted by the Tsarina. The American Revolution, if you think about, our founders based their philosophy on freedom and God. And, our founding documents are shot through with references, biblical references, and talking about personal freedom. The French Revolution, which occurred shortly after, but same time frame, they went off on some deep tangent, but theirs was not a revolution based on, God. It was a revolution based on revenge. And their thing was to punish the royals. We just kicked them out, but they beheaded them. And then they turned on each other. And there was a famous political cartoon of the time where it showed this forest of guillotines. And it's the last guy in Paris in a guillotine pulling the cord for his own beheading because he's the only one left.
Wow.
And that's what happens when you don't answer to a higher power. You don't think beyond yourself. You don't think about your children's future. And in Russia, they never even got that far. But then when they finally did the Bolshevik revolution, they were godless. And one of the first things they did was destroy the Russian Orthodox Church. And we see how that turned out. But you can't have a religion that works unless you have a religion based on faith.
Very well said, Jeff. So last question, you can wrap up the entire podcast main topic on this. If founders like Jefferson dropped in today, what tyranny warning would hit the hardest?
Taxes. No, seriously, you think about it. We started a revolution over a 3% tax on tea. What would they say to 60, 70% tax rates for income, between income and property tax and all that? But they would say, did you not learn anything from what happened?
Good answer. Really good answer. So we'll wrap up. Basically, coordinated terrorist attacks are going to be used to justify authoritarian controls that strip our constitutional freedom. So build your local network now, identify, trusted believers, establish encrypted communications using apps like Element and Signal. If you're an SDN Guardian, you automatically get included in all of our private chats, which are encrypted. And we're moving to Element, our own personal Element server. It's encrypted. And here's the other part. We have so many Guardians across the country now that we've actually had situations where the legacy news is reporting one thing, people on X are reporting another thing, and Guardians come into the chat and say, none of that's happening. Here's what's really happening. I just left where this thing happened. So it short circuits all of the legacy media propaganda, as well as people on X that you may or may not be able to trust. You don't know if you can trust them or not. So having having a group in place, a network in place, is critical. Lone wolves will not survive, but there's strength in numbers. So that being said, Pastor Sam, this is my favorite part of the night. I get to do this 6 days a week, 5 times here in SDN, once on my own podcast at Sunday evenings. But here we go. 3, 2, 1. All right, so it is time for the Carnival Hero of the Day, and it's from Steve Inman. Those who follow me know I love Steve Inman. He just does a great job. From patient to hero, 53 seconds. Watch this unfold.
Imagine you're at the dentist office, you're getting a root canal, it's a bad day because you got so much shit left to do at work. Then things take a turn for the worst as this joint gets robbed by these thugs, probably trying to grab some nitrous oxide. Either that or they're just good kids trying to go to college and they just need some dental supplies. Bullshit. They're thugs. They're trying to rob the joint. Now there's a struggle and the patient's like, hey, what's up now? You like getting a freaking pistola stuck in your face? Still several robbers in the place. He's neutralized that situation. Too bad he didn't give him summer teeth since he's at a dentist office and robber number 2 comes in, tries to go for a tackle and ends up getting manhandled and eating several punches in the process. It's unfortunate he didn't turn these thugs into Swiss cheese, but legend has it he took these guys in the back and did some custom, unnecessary dental work. Congrats.
Sam, it cracks me up. I don't know if you know Steve Inman at all, but when he refers to somebody being shot, he's like, and the hero hit them with his wireless hole puncher. Or if somebody gets tasered, they get some Edison medicine. It's funny stuff. So, conflicted question of the night: with the collapse of modern civilization, the masses had to take care of their own problems. If suddenly there were no laws or government, how do you think people should deal with today's misdemeanors, minor crimes, such as property damage, theft, harassment, and fraud? I'll go to you first, Pastor.
I've thought about this the whole show. This question, I think it's a really good question. In the first answer, the one that just keeps coming to my mind is, hopefully you'd have a community of a church there, and you could take it there to the church to go to look at almost kind of what was happening in Exodus 18, where Moses, the people were bringing these kinds of problems to Moses. Because of course the laws are going to be there. The justice is going to be there. What's right and wrong, even if our government isn't there. But hopefully we'd be able to establish a government that honors God from the ruins there.
Well said. Well said. Jeff, how would you approach this?
Well, depending on the size of the group, I would almost say, okay, a jury of your peers. If you have a group of 20 or 30 people, a jury of your peers could be, okay, we'll take everybody in the group who's over the age of, 20 years old, 25, whatever, and have two sides. Have basically the plaintiff plead his case, the defendant plead his case, and let the group decide. And as far as punishments go, obviously, if it's, someone damages your property, you've got to fix it or replace it. But for, minor assaults and things like that, it sounds cruel, but I'd almost go back to stocks and pillories with public shaming. They had low crime rates back in those days for a reason. Nobody wanted to be locked in the stocks for 24 hours where you wet yourself and all that stuff, and you're humiliated by your neighbors.
Yeah, well said. So because Khalid's not here tonight, I'm going to represent for him and say BFE, battlefield execution. All crimes get battlefield execution. End of story. I'm joking, of course. In reality, I go with exactly what I said earlier tonight. I would revert back to the 10 Commandments, because I think if you enforce the 10 Commandments, everything else kind of sorts itself out afterwards. But Sam, I want to thank you very much for joining us tonight. Awesome insight. Welcome to join us anytime. Jeff, always appreciate your insight. I learned something every time we talk. I forgot to mention one thing with Carnival and Wasatch Wagyu, by the way. If you are an annual Guardian subscriber and you spend over $99 on either product, forward it to support@survivaldispatch.com, and I will extend your annual membership by 30 days every time you do that. We will be back. What day of the week is it again? Is it Friday, Jeff? I can't keep track.
Well,
it's Thursday.
So tomorrow is Friday.
It's Thursday. Okay. So again, it all just blends together. So we will, in fact, be back tomorrow night at the usual time, 7 p.m. Eastern, with the next episode in our Long War series, Breaking the Control Grid. And again, I want to thank all of our guardians and sponsors. So normally on Thursday night, we do a prayer from Pastor Kessel, but I got it a little bit late today and the studio was already built. So I'm going to play that tomorrow night. And tonight we've got a brand new video. So between now and tomorrow night, please like, share, comment, subscribe. God bless America. Enjoy the closing video.
Then said he unto them, But now, he that hath a purse, let him take it, and likewise his scrip, and he that hath no sword, let him sell his garment and buy one. Luke 22, verse 36. Good evening, brothers and sisters. If you're a Christian man, listen closely to what I have to say. You must be dangerous, a threat to every lie, every force that dares to rise against the truth of Christ. Look around you. Over 2 billion claim the name of Christ, but how many of us are willing to stand when our faith is being mocked, when truth is challenged, when churches are replaced or torn down, when the name of our Lord is dragged through the mud? Where's the spine? Where are the men who will speak when the world spits in the face of our King? They desecrate what is holy. They mock what is sacred. Should they not have a look at us in fear? Let me tell you something. Without strength, your goodness is worthless. A man who poses no threat to the enemy is not a virtue to the Lord. He's a liability. Do you really think evil backs down just because a man loves God? No, it doesn't back down just because you sing worship songs on Sunday. It laughs at men who talk about love but lack the guts to defend it. And if men won't protect truth, if he won't guard what is sacred, then the faithless will overrun us. Never forget that turn the other cheek applies to disputes between your brothers and fellow believers, not to the wolves and forces of evil in this world. Evil thrives where men stay passive. The enemy longs for a faith filled with such men, obedient yet harmless, devoted yet silent, because without strength, even devotion loses weight. Just look at Europe as an example. Once rich in Christian roots and history, it is now overrun by those who serve another master. They preach against Christ, persecute his followers, and it all began when they failed to guard what they let in. It is the ultimate cautionary tale to never compromise your faith. They saw the Christians and saw no threat. How wrong they are. Christ wasn't soft. He was wise. He cast out demons. He rebuked leaders. He flipped tables. He was gentle with the broken, but ruthless with evil, and didn't come to please the world. He came to conquer it. And your heavenly Father, he's not tamed. He's a consuming fire, a righteous judge, the Lion and the Lamb. And you, man of God, was called to have that balance, not one or the other. There should be nothing about you that is harmless. When portraying being harmless as the highest good, established Christianity aids and abets the enemy. Christ demands ultimate loyalty, which means if someone mocks the gospel, distorts truth, or invades the holy, you must have the spine and conviction to rise against it. Remember the passage from Revelations 3 verse 19. As many as I love, I rebuke and chasten. Be zealous therefore and repent. You don't get to be weak and still claim to serve the King. That's not humility. Be the man with the spine. We must not decrease in number, nor succumb to the noise and rising power of the faithless who serve another master. Because the truth is, if you won't fight for your faith, you'll lose it. The world doesn't need more passive men pretending to follow Christ. It needs men who are powerful and dangerous, who will go to any length to preserve his name. Be gentle enough to love, strong enough to lead, dangerous enough to destroy evil. Your Father is your honor. His land was not meant for enemies to thrive on. You come from a sacred bloodline, the spiritual lineage of Christ, the Son of God, the Lamb who was slain, the one whose blood you owe your life to. So protect it. Protect the lineage. Protect the truth. Let no foolish man drag our faith into decay. Let no coward distort what generations bled to defend. And let the world know who you believe in, the God of the Bible, the Holy One, the consuming fire, the risen King. As it is written in Exodus 15, verse 3, the Lord is a man of war. The Lord is his name. Remember that you are not just a man. You are a soldier of Christ. You represent his will. You stand as a Templar. We should never fear the unknown or even death itself, because Christ has already defeated fear and death. Thus, if we allow ourselves to be conquered by fear and death, how can we say that Christ lives in us? Deus vult.